Hello BCT 205 students, this is John Hannon. I wanted to make a short video and show you some of the tools that I've been using to do some of the example problems from the text. Some of you may be using a handheld calculator, which is fine. I don't really have one, so my two tools of choice are an Excel spreadsheet, which some of you may have experience with. If you don't, then this might be a good time to start mastering Microsoft Excel. I can promise that you will use it in your career and other courses, but it won't do everything that we need to do in this class. Specifically, I've been working on the Chapter 3 problems, and the other tool that I've been using is the built-in calculator in the Microsoft Windows operating system. If yours doesn't look like mine, you may need to go to the View. It may be set to Standard. If you go to the View drop-down menu and choose Scientific, that's the one that I've been using and that you will want to use if you want to follow along. There are some other things here that you should look out, check out in the drop-down menu, but I won't go into that. I want to keep this relatively short. So let's talk about advantages and disadvantages. The spreadsheet, Microsoft Excel, doesn't like working in degrees very well. That's the problem with it. When it does the trig functions, alright, specifically cosine, sine, cosine, tangent, or the inverse functions of those, it wants to work in radians. So I'll go through some of those briefly to give you an idea. I also have in the reference folder in the Blackboard shell are some tutorials and some more videos. So I've been using both. Let me tell you why I like the calculator. Because I can add and subtract degrees, minutes, and seconds quicker and much easier than in the spreadsheet. The advantage of the spreadsheet, on the other hand, is you can set up your problems and you'll see some more of that from me, but you can set up your problems to where you can put in your variables and they'll work for multiple homework problems, things of that nature. With a calculator, you have to clear and start every time. Alright, so let's add and subtract some degrees, minutes, and seconds using the calculator set on scientific mode. And for instance, in Chapter 3, practice problem 10a gave an angle and the hypotenuse of a triangle and asked for solving the other parts of the triangle. Well, one of the things that needs to be done, it's a right triangle, so we know one of the angles is 90 degrees. So if I add 42 degrees, 23 minutes, and 12 seconds to 90 and subtract from 180, I should get this number, solving for the third triangle. Okay, so I come up here to the calculator, and the way I key in, I'm using the keyboard. You can use your mouse and do it that way. It's much quicker for me to use the keyboard. If I go 42 point, alright, it's for 42 degrees, 23 minutes, 12 seconds. Then I just hit the plus sign and I add 90 degrees and I get this number. But it's not correct until I go to the inverse key and then degrees. So now what I'm looking for is, now what I'm looking at is 132 degrees, 38 minutes, 67 seconds. And if I subtract that, just hit the subtract key on my keyboard from 180, which I also hit the inverse degree and say equals, I get a number, but until I click degrees, minutes, and seconds, it's not correct. So if you look at the example or the answers, I think this is a practice problem and the answers are in Appendix F. The answer is 47 degrees, 36 minutes, 48 seconds. So you can rewind this and look, but I added two angles in decimal form, got an answer, and I clicked inverse degrees, and then for anything I want to add and subtract, I key it in again. It's got to be inverse degrees, and then the answer doesn't show right now, but you have to click degrees, minutes, seconds for the product or any addition or subtraction. So play with that on answers that you know, and it gets pretty easy, and that way I don't have to carry a calculator around. You can put things in memory. This will put it in a buffer, so if I hit M+, that means I have this number in the buffer. So I could take 100 minus whatever's in the buffer. I go memory recall, and I get a number. MC is memory clear. Clear entry or clear is down here. I just hit the escape key, and that works fine. Works well on the sine, cosine, and tangents as well. In the reference section, I have a trig table that you can play with and check your answers. So I'm going to play with 30 degrees in Excel right now, and I can also check against this reference here. Okay, so this link is in Blackboard. Let's go back to Excel. The problem with Excel is it doesn't work in degrees. So here are some of the functions I used when I was solving the problems, practice, and examples in the text. If I wanted to square a number, there's a square root function. So if, for instance, you want to put a formula in Excel, you can do it two ways. To bring up a formula in this cell, I can come up here to the FX, and you can type in what you think might be the name of a formula or a function. You can look at it by groups. There's a math and trig group. And once you start using them, then it automatically defaults to the ones that you've been using. Okay, so that's one way. You can simply type it in this field if you know it, or you can come down here, and there's not a square the number function. I go equals P-O-W-E-R. The P key is messing with me. So if I hit power, double click it, it says what number? I click 30, and if I want it squared, that's to the power 2, and I say OK. There's my number. If I want the square root, I can go equals. If I hit SQ, you can see it kind of starts giving you options in this little window here. I click the FX, hit 30. Whoops, don't want to do that. It's all backspace. I want the square of this, and there I go. And if I click in those cells, you can see up here, you can see the formulas. Okay. Now if I want to use the trig functions or their inverses, we've got to work in radians because Excel unfortunately doesn't do degrees. So it's not too bad once you start using it if I say equals, and here is the radians function. I double click it. I want the radian of 30 degrees. I say OK. And besides significant digits, which you can alter here, and there's usually several different ways to do things in Excel, but that's one coming up here. So if I want the cosine of 30 degrees, now that I have it converted to radian measure, then I just use the cosine function. I say equals cosine, double click that, click my cell, hit enter, and I'm good. Same thing with the sine function. Happens to just be sine. Double click it, click the radian for 30 degrees. Same with tangent. Hit my radian. Here we go. And again, play with it, experiment with it, and always check it against, see that checks out against this table, which I've given you a link to. And one of the problems I had to use the inverse function to solve. One of the examples in the book is the same way, and typically that's arc cos, arc sine, and arc tangent. Those functions are also in there. If you hit the A, for instance, there's a cosine. Right? That's the inverse of the cosine function. Do the same way. Click in the radian conversion, and there you go. A sine, radian, boom. So these are the tools that I'm using. You'll see them in other videos. Again, whatever tools work for you are great. I just don't have a handheld calculator. I'm in front of a computer all day, and these are my two tools of choice. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you very much.